What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to iStuff Gaming, and today we're doing my personal tier list on the assassins. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get into it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert on every single assassin. This is just personal opinion. The only people who are really going to be ordered are my number 1 and my number 2, who I'm going to reveal at the end of the video. Again, this is my personal opinion. I'm always up for debate. I'm always up to discuss about where I like to place them on my tier list. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, first up is Arachne. S tier. Without a doubt in my mind, S tier. Can't really fight her back as a squishy until late game. And even then, it's still extremely hard to, because she can instantly kill anybody she wants to. She has a really powerful passive. Massive slows, really good damage with sustain and one ability. It does burst and tick damage, which is nuts. And then on top of that, the AA gods right now are very, very strong with a really powerful get in and get out tool. So Arachne, without a doubt in my mind, is S tier. Only issue really being is that if she gets focused or counter built, then she does struggle a bit, but that's not really saying much. Up next, we have Awilix. Me personally, I think Awilix is A. You know, she's like, she can instantly kill a lot of people. She has a lot of mobility with her 1. I think she's one of the faster rotating junglers in the game. Not necessarily a faster farmer, but a faster rotator. Her ult is very strong, especially against characters who have run moves. So it's really difficult to get away from a good Awilix player. Plus, her 2 makes it to where she can avoid damage and still do massive amounts of damage on top of that, and root you, which is kind of crazy. Only reason why I put her in A is simply because the S tier characters are just that much better. If any of the S tier characters get nerfed, or if she gets buffed even a little bit, I think she would be a strong contender for it. Moving on, we have Bakasura. Bakasura is really strong in my opinion. Again, AA gods are very powerful right now. Really great sustain, really amazing farming. It's really hard to out farm a good Bakasura. And he has true damage on his abilities, on his autos with his 3, which also gives him extra power. Only issue is that that even though his ult does cripple, that's really his only form of CC. So it's harder for Bakasura to stick to you. So, because of how the S tiers work, I think Bakasura is A. Damn near close to S. Again, if he gets any kind of buff or the S tiers get nerfed, he's going to be back at one of the best assassins in the game. But simply because he lacks CC, he's A. Bastet. Not even going to talk about it. Like, she's just bad. She's just really bad. She's only a threat when she has her ult. Other than that, she's subpar. Really, no point. Kamazadz. I have a lot of mixed feelings about Kamazadz. Kamazadz is a very powerful jungler and a really powerful solo laner. Has massive amounts of sustain, good damage, and an ult that not only does damage but lets him avoid damage while being CC immune. And a really good passive, despite, because after a team fight or after getting a kill, if you're low, you can drink the pools and get health and mana back, which is really good for laning phase and rotating phase. So I think that makes Kamazadz great. Issues, his skill shots. He has nothing but skill shots besides his leap, and if he can't hit any of them, can't really function as a character. I don't think he's really viable if he misses anything. So he doesn't have that luxury to miss like a lot of the other junglers or a lot of the other assassins or a lot of the other gods in the game have. Plus, because those skill shots are on a relatively long cooldown, that does hurt him. And just like a lot of the assassins in this list, he lacks hard CC. So I think he's A. Closer to B, but he's definitely still A. Simply because the amount of damage he can do and the amount of sustain that he has. Up next, we have Daji. Now, Daji recently saw a buff or two. Now it does a lot more damage. Daji really reminds me a lot of like old Loki. If she wants you dead, you're gonna die. She has a great team fighting ult, and she's a beads burner, and she does massive amounts of damage. Issues. She's very high risk, high reward. If you don't know what high risk, high reward is it basically means you take a huge risk putting yourself in danger or putting yourself in a very precarious situation. But if it works, you get a massive reward out of it, i.e. a kill, or i.e. you get double kills or team setups, something like that. Daji being high risk, high reward as an assassin does hurt her a little bit because assassins are just naturally squishy. And she can only be a jungler, so she's gonna be really squishy all the time whenever you see her. On top of that, her ult, while being really strong, can only really affect 2 to 3 people at a time because she only gets 3 shots. At maximum, it could hit 4. Maybe. Actually, at maximum, you could probably hit an entire team if they're standing really close together, but that's very rarely the case. And so, because she's a beads burner, because she's a beads burner, everybody's gonna beat her ult. Right? And then on top of that, because she's very high reward, when she dives in when those team fights start to happen, she's very prone to get focused. So when the mid to late game come along, it starts becoming an ult bot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it makes her job as a nuker a lot harder. So because of that, I think she's A. Can't really put her in B because her damage output, the tick damage, the burst damage with her 1, the passive, the ult, combining all that together, Daji is a very viable jungler. Up next, we're gonna talk about Fenrir. Fenrir's B. Fenrir's B. Very high amounts of damage, like insane amounts of damage. He can one shot a lot of squishy. He has amazing sustain. Because of the rework to how his 2 works now, he can always have a stun or max damage brutalize at any given moment. And the ult is very powerful because of how it can set up team fights. Because what he can do is he can ult the tank and then drag them out of a fight, making it to where his team can nuke the backline a lot easier. So, very powerful. Really big issue is that he is very vulnerable to cripples. Very vulnerable to cripples. Like if there's an RD on the enemy team, Fenrir can't do anything. If there's an Ares on the enemy team and he has skill, Fenrir can't do anything. If there's a King Arthur in the enemy team and he always knows to cripple the Fenrir can't do anything. His entire kit and all of his damage is locked behind movement ability. So I think if the one thing I want to see for Fenrir is that they change how his brutalize works. His leap being cripple vulnerable is fine, but the brutalize shouldn't be cripple immune. To me, I think that the brutalize should be cripple immune if it's already being casted. And plus, I don't know if this is a bug or not, but if Fenrir leaps and he's in the middle of the leap animation and then Ardio throws her cripple, when Fenrir lands, the damage doesn't come out, which is dumb. So I think that's a bug. I don't know if it is or not, but because of those things, Fenrir can't really be higher than B because his kit is solely reliant on movement, and he's hard countered by a lot of gods in the game. Up next, we're going to talk about Hunbots. Hunbots is amazing to me. Really great team fighting ult, and unlike Daji's ult, even though it is a beads burner, it will always affect the enemy team. Right? There's no chance for you to miss. There's nothing. You just ult and everybody's affected by it. And that's on a relatively low cooldown. Plus, he has a Hydra's built in his kit, and he has ways to get in and get out. So, Hunbots to me is S. Closer to A, but he's definitely S because the ult, the Hydra's procs, and the amount of damage he can pump out at any given time. Plus, he doesn't really have a super bad fall off when late game comes along because of how his ult works. The Humbox is definitely S. Holly. Holly is Arachne Light. Stun, bleed damage, can't fight her back, and all she needs is beads. She doesn't need Aegis. All she needs is beads and blink, and she's a menace. Especially when she hits level 5. And when she hits late game. Late game, you're not fighting Kali at all. Kali is, without a doubt, one of the best assassins in the game. So, with that in mind, she's S. The only bad thing about her, in my opinion, is her passive. Reason being is because it's very random to me. Yes, it says it's the closest god to you, but when a team fight happens, that can be very iffy. And if it gets thrown onto a tank, even though she will be able to shred the tank, she doesn't want to shred the tank. She wants to shred. Right? That's just me. But it's not necessarily a bad passive. I just think it's too random for me. But she's definitely one of the best assassins in the game. Loki. After his rework, people thought he was trash. People thought he was better. People thought the community is very 50-50 on how Loki is. Personally, I think he's B. Yeah, I think he's B. His ult's a lot better. His 2 is really strong. His 3 is really strong. I just don't. His CC can only affect one person. His 3 can be interrupted. His 2 doesn't do damage. It's really only there to set up his other kit. And the invis is really strong because it makes it to where it's really hard to pin down Loki. But what a lot of people don't realize is that his 1 is one of his hardest hitting moves. So, like, it's like a Thor situation, which I'll get to later, where he has to choose whether or not he wants to get in, get out, sacrificing damage for survivability. So that hurts him a bit. And a lot of people don't know this tech. When Loki ults you, my friend put me onto this actually. When Loki ults you, pay attention to where he's teleporting behind you and walk into him. He will miss. He will miss almost about 85% of the time. He will miss. It's like dealing with a Ymir freeze. Just walk at him at an angle, and he'll miss every time. So that's a lot. That's a lot that's bad for him. Saving graces is that while his kit is just meh to me, he does still perform very well out the jungle, and he can be flexed in the solo lane. So I think he's B for that. He might be closer to A, but I think he's B. Up next, Mercury. Mercury is an S tier jungler. S tier assassin, S tier god. Reason being is because he's his late game is almost as bad as Kali's. Not as bad, but as great as Kali's. When he has all crit on, when he has his build going, he can one-shot a lot of people. Plus, he's one of the hardest hitting crit gods in the game. With the dumb passive that makes up, with the dumb passive that stacks on top of that. With good CC, he has 2 stuns. One of which can throw enemies back towards your team, which is very powerful. He can't be slowed. He has a really good attack chain. His 1 is very strong for poking and for confirming kills because it has such a wide radius. So Mercury is really strong. I can't see me putting him in one of the best though, simply because it will take a while for Mercury to get online in a Smite game. So when you have a Mercury on your team, even as good as the Mercury may be, you're gonna be playing for the mid to late game with a Mercury jungle. It's just the way it is. Naja. B tier? Oh, dang near C tier. I actually want to put Naja in C tier. He's a lot closer to B, but I was discussing this in the stream the other day, and Naja's kit is very outdated. Naja is high risk, medium reward, what you don't want. His own kit puts him in danger. His ult, while it's a good banish, and while his ult is a good banish, it is a skill shot, and it's very prone to miss, unless you know you're a god with Naja. But even then, you're still gonna miss every once in a while, right? He can be a solo laner, he can be a support, he can be a jungler. But at the end of the day, Naja's kit is very mediocre. I can't really see myself putting him any higher than C. And I think Najad's one of the guys that needs a rework. His kit is way too outdated for because there's too many guys who have plenty of CC. There's too many gods that has stuns, meds, self-sustain, CC immune ults. Like there's a lot working against Najah, right? And the only reason being that Fenrir is better than Najah is because Fenrir can get out if he wants to. He can go in then immediately get out if he needs to. Najah, on the other hand, his root and his stun puts him in harm's way. So I think Najah needs him. Up next, we have Nemesis. I want to put Nemesis in S tier. Really powerful AA cancel god. Really powerful shield. Really powerful slow. Really good damage, and a passive that makes it to where whoever she hits, will do less damage, and she'll do more damage to them. So it's fairly good on her part. Only issue that she really doesn't have any CC. That's literally her only issue, and the fact that Mezzes and stuns hard counter her. Like anything that Mezzes counters, pushes, counters. Mezzes, stuns, pushes, anything that will move anything that will move Nemesis while she's in her shield, hard counters her. A lot of people don't realize that shield makes up for a lot of her damage because the shield makes you hit yourself, and then she gets a burst, like a big chunk of health back. So, she definitely doesn't need any help. She doesn't really need any CC because of how quickly she can kill somebody. So, and then she can take away protections and movement speed from the supports and tanks. So, that's really powerful for her. Up next, we have Pele. Pele's A tier. A good Pele can carry a game. I'm not even gonna lie about that. She has really powerful CC. Only issues is that her late game is just okay. It's okay. It's not bad, but it's just okay. Season 8 really hurt her. What they did with Season 8 is that they made it to where if you're not actively fighting, your healing is cut by like 50 to 70%. It's massive. So Pele can't just go into a team fight, be 1 HP, then go into the jungle, hit a jungle camp, and then get back full HP. Granted, it was broken and it was dumb, but because of that, Pele did take a massive hit. Plus, she's seen multiple nerfs, damage nerfs, stain nerfs. So, and then her ult is, while it can be very strong, it's on the lower end of ults to me. So I think she's A. Ratatoskr up next. If you've seen my streams, if you've seen how I talk about assassins, you would know that Ratatoskr to me is very overhyped, you know. But after further review and after fighting against a couple Ratatoskrs, I think the hype behind him is very well justified. But I can't really put him in S. He has a really strong kit, really a lot of flexibility with his builds, can be used in multiple different roles. So for me, A. Ravana is on the up and coming. Really, lots of good CC, slow root. Erendite built into his kit. He has a CC immune, damage immune backflip though, and while that's on a relatively long cooldown, the fact that he even has that is very powerful. His passive is nothing to cry home about, but the fact that it does give him a health shield after 8 autos is really good to me. Lots of sustain. Lots and lots of sustain because of his 3 and the slow. So Ravana could be a menace to deal with. Again, you're gonna be seeing this a lot. He's A tier, and he's only in A because of the S tiers. Literally, the only reason he's in A is because of the S tiers. If any of the S tiers get nerfed, Ravana would go up. Serket. Crash. She's with Bastet. I wanted to give her C because she can be very slippery, so it's harder to kill her Serket. But her own ult gets her killed. Because when she ults, she stands on top of an enemy god for like 2 seconds. And in that time, that god can beats and hit her. Right? So, and then like I see people put her in support. I see people put her in solo because if she builds tanky, she can't get nuked, right? But at the end of the day, she's just very lacking. She's very lacking. Doesn't really do a lot of damage even with a full damage build unless you hit absolutely everything, and I mean everything out of your kit to kill one person, which is kind of right? So I think Serket is I can't really see her, I can't really see her going any higher than C unless they give her some really needed buffs. Set. Without a doubt in my mind, Set is the best ability-based god, ability-based assassin. Good sustain, has a slow, relatively low cooldowns. Really good passive. I will give him a really good passive. He's very hard countered by CC. Very hard countered by CC. And you can say that a lot about the gods in the game, but his ult is very reliant on him hitting autos. His kit is very reliant on him not being stunned. His kit is very reliant on hitting absolutely everything, right? And while he can be slippery and has a command teleport, he can't really stick to you like other gods can. You could say like, oh, if you would Frostbound, Hasty Katana, you know, you could get rid of that issue. But if you do that, you lose a lot, and I mean a lot of damage. And you can only really get away with that if you put him in the solo lane. But if you put him in the solo lane, you lose a real frontliner. So that is very weird to me. I don't really know where to put him. I can't put him in S, but he's no lower than A. So I'm putting him here. Up next we have Susano. Susano is one of the coolest gods in the game. Hands down. Not just assassins, he's one of the coolest gods in the game. Weeb alert, I know. He has great CC, sticks to you like glue, can insta-kill any squishy in the game, really powerful ult, which has a knockup, which is one of the best forms of CC, and a pull in his 2. His real only issue is that his mana and his cooldowns are terrible early. They're very bad early. You know? And then on top of that, Susano does have a skill ceiling. If you can't auto attack cancel with Susano, you are not playing Susano to his full potential. And that's the only way he can really insta-kill people. Susano is a very cool god. If they just look at his mana consumption just a little bit, or look at his cooldowns just a little bit, I think he would be an S tier jungler, or an S tier assassin. But because of where he is right now, he's A. I can't really see myself saying buff him in a serious tone. It would be nice, but at the end of the day, those are his very glaring issues. So he's A tier. Up next, we have Thanatos. Thanatos is well, before I get into Thanatos, let me say this: a god, any god with an execute will never be unviable. It's just the way it is. Like Achilles has saw multiple nerfs. He's never gonna be unviable because of his kit, a stun, and an execute. If he didn't have the execute, Achilles would just be okay. Ao Kuang, really mad early game, but because of that execute, he can always put in that invis into execute. He can always be a threat. Thanatos is no different. He boasts one of the best early games in the game. High amounts of damage. He has a pen passive, which gives him movement speed, and he gets more movement speed if somebody on the enemy team is close to death. An execute, again, he has an execute, which leads into, but if it doesn't execute, it stuns. He has a silence, which is very powerful. Only real issues is that his late game is met, and that his highest damaging move is on a skill shot. But because of Hidden Dagger, his late game is a lot better now. It's not god tier, but it's definitely a lot better because of Hidden Dagger. And then the one being a skill shot really doesn't matter because you could just pop your 2, silence them, and then instantly hit them with the one while you're standing right next to them. Right? It's so and then his execute goes up to 40% health. If you're at 40% health, you're in execute range, which is scary, especially for a tank, which basically means you're operating at half your, what, 2/3 of your health at any given moment. So Thanatos is very powerful. So I think he's A. Only because his late game is just okay, and because auto attack gods are very powerful right now. If auto attackers get nerfed, Thanatos would, in my opinion, would probably be up there in S. And he's a really cool god, so there's that. Thor. Ooh, I have so many mixed feelings about Thor. Like Susano early, his mana consumption is very bad, right? And we've all been in those situations where Thor throws his stun, which is his wall, and it stops you from being able to kill the enemy team. We've all had those happen before. And then, like I was mentioning earlier, his one, it deals a lot of damage. It probably hits harder than a Thanatos one, but you have to choose between it doing more damage or getting closer to the god or running away. So again, it's one of those situations where, do I use this move to engage, or do I use this move to cash out on damage? So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something he has to think about and has the opportunity and the potential to lose out on a third of his damage. What saves him is the ult. That ult is nuts. It's a stun. It does damage to enemy gods around him. It reaches far. It goes very far. And it changes team fights. And if you're good enough, Thor can be flexed out of the solo lane. Thor does have a lot going for him, and his passive is actually relatively strong. More gods around him, more power he gets, which is really good. So I think Thor belongs in B. He's not bad, but he's not amazing. His ult really holds him up. If he didn't have that, he would just be absolutely average, but he does, so he's B. And last but not least, we have Tsukuyomi. You already know Tsukuyomi's an S tier jungler. Everybody knows why this god is S tier. Really, really powerful ult that's hard to counter. Disarm into a stun. Massive slow, that does take damage. And then he has another slow that's on a 4-second cooldown if he gets close to you after hitting it. And then it steals movement speed. His only issue, and then he has range autos after hitting his 1 and his 3. So, and then his only issues being is that he can't really run away. But because he has so many ways to slow you and get out, it's very powerful. And then on top of that, if you know how to counter Suku ult, which is honestly just Aegis and then drag him somewhere where he's put in a bad spot, then that does hurt him a bit. But at the end of the day, he's still S tier. But this is the tier list. So now we're going to discuss my number 1 and my number 2. Arachne belongs right here at number 1. She's way too easy, does way too much damage, and then her passive is nuts. She has extreme amounts of safety, rules early, can rule late game, and her 1 does burst, tick damage, and it gives her sustain. With a stun and a movement speed slow with minions. She has a lot going for her. And auto attack gods are very powerful right now, so Arachne is the best assassin. If you've seen my past streams, you would have known that this is probably like my 3rd time remaking this tier list. But my number 2, now after further review, is Kali. She's literally Arachne light. If you ban Arachne, you're gonna pick Kali. That's just the way it is. Kali is dumb. And I hate myself that I thought she was lower on the totem pole. Nah, she's really stupid right now. But anyway, that's the video. If you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you